I wish that I could be there for every single one of these transactions, but realistically, I cannot be. I cannot take care of students at every step of the way. And maybe that's good. Maybe it's good that they learn some of those kind of difficult lessons as they go. It's pretty uncomfortable to have somebody telling you one thing and you having to be arguing back, especially about money, which many people are uncomfortable with. So to continue my story of planning my short-term study abroad program for 10 college students and myself and my husband as chaperones, the next topic is going to be transportation. Probably when you're thinking about the logistics of how to plan a program like this, transportation would come right at the top of the list of how on earth are you going to move so many bodies around and make sure that everybody gets to where they're going to go. And there is quite a lot to it, so let's talk about it. One of the ways that you can approach this is actually to hire a company to plan the itinerary for the entire thing so that you never really have to think about that kind of transportation stuff. But in my opinion, I've always traveled in a way that allows me to have flexibility. I've never joined a tour. In all of my travels, I've never joined a tour for anything. For one thing, it tends to be rather expensive. I do believe they add hefty fees on. And for another thing, it seems like it might be kind of restrictive. We might not have the flexibility to do exactly what we want to do every day or to switch an itinerary around. For example, if somebody's feeling a little bit sick and needs to stay back in their room, we might not have that option. And so it just didn't make sense to me to hire a tour company to plan this, and so I do plan all of the transport myself. By far, the highest expense that we have is the transatlantic flight. And 3 years ago, when I took my last trip with students to India, the round trip ticket costs were about $1,000. It was about $1,050, as I recall. I had expanded my budget a little bit because I was anticipating that we might have to pay as much as $1,200 or $1,400 round trip. Not even close, not even close. My estimates were way off, I must admit. 3 years ago, we went through United Groups, which allowed us to have, if you had at least 9 travelers, they would book the tickets for you. When you go through United Group, as is possibly true of any other airline group, it's restrictive. You're not allowed to have access to all of the different specials that would be available for a single traveler or like 2 to 4 travelers, something like that. Once you get into the group levels, it's just a little bit more restrictive. And so we weren't able to get the lowest price, but $1,000 is not too bad in my opinion. So that's what we paid 3 years ago. This year, I decided I was going to call United Groups again. Probably started back in February just to get a ballpark for, well, how much is it now? How much is it? And I was thinking it would be a little more expensive. $2,800. So remember, 3 years ago, it was $1,000. And now it's almost $3,000. And they told me, call back because there might be more tickets released to the group airlines. And I kept calling back and it kept being the same amount of money. And $2,800 is actually more than the original total budget for the trip that I had. It was one of those moments, just this sinking feeling like, I don't think we'll be able to go. I couldn't ask them to pay that much more, $2,000 more than budgeted. I couldn't ask it. I wouldn't have even tried. So anyway, I spent the next few months just trying to figure out what are my other options. One of the things that I was trying to do was trying to figure out, I was working with United Groups in the last time, so I was trying to find another airline that would allow me to do a group discount, a group purchase, and there were various reasons that I just couldn't do it. For example, if I went through, I think it was Lufthansa, they had a flight I was interested in, but they only allow group tickets for people who are citizens of their country. And so Lufthansa did. And there were other things like that. So the group travel, when you do group tickets directly through the airline, it's just more restrictive and it just wasn't really working out. So I spent all May, June, July, August calling up all the different airlines, trying to figure out a group travel discount, trying to figure out, I did talk to different travel agents. Most travel agents won't even work for you if you're only looking to get airline tickets, and not like a 12 is not a very large number. We did find one travel agent that would work with us and was willing to purchase our tickets, but it turns out they were looking at exactly the same websites that I was able to access. So it was just, I went ahead and just purchased them myself finally. We are going to be flying on Swiss Air. The airline tickets cost something around $1,700 or $1,800, and that's quite a bit more than planned, of course, that was in the budget. And I did lose some students based on that. The total cost of the trip was going up substantially because that transatlantic flight was so much more expensive than originally planned. But we do have 10 students who have agreed, who agreed to pay the extra money, which is a big deal. And I feel pretty self-conscious about it, to be honest, because I just, I don't feel it's right. Already it's quite expensive, but to ask them to spend so much more, I feel the weight of that. Let's put it that way. Anyway, so as we were coming through July and August, I kind of narrowed down the acceptable number to 3 different airlines and 3 different flights. One of them, the most expensive one, was a direct flight, which quite honestly, if I'd had my druthers, I probably would vote for a direct flight. A direct flight from Chicago to Delhi is about 15 hours, which is brutal, I'm not gonna lie, but my husband and I both are, at least it's over, but the way that we're doing it now, it'll be 8 hours and then 8 hours, and that's also, very valuable to have that time to kind of walk around. So I had the highest cost was a direct flight. Only one student voted for that, as I recall. Most students voted for Swiss Air, which was the middle, and we did have a couple of students vote for the lowest cost. They voted for the Swiss Air. On the way back, we're going to actually have a long layover, 7-hour layover in Zurich, and so we'll have the ability to leave the airport. It's a really quick train ride into the shopping area of Zurich, and then we can have a little breakfast and do a little shopping and get some Swiss chocolate or Swiss watches or whatever. I don't know what people are going to buy, and get back to the airport in time to take off for the flight on back home across the Atlantic. So it'll be fun to have a bonus country. So I ended up actually purchasing these tickets through, I think I went through Kayak, and they sent me to a third-party website, and it was a website I'd never really heard of before. So now that we had the transatlantic tickets in hand, the next thing we wanted to do was think about how we are going to get around all the other areas of India, all the things that we wanted to do in country. So the second major purchase that I wanted to make was a sleeper train. So there are 2 big stops that we make. We stay about 6 days in Delhi, and we stay for about 8 days in Varanasi. And so it's a matter of how do you get from Delhi to Varanasi. And I wanted the students to have the experience of actually traveling on an Indian train. And so I know of a sleeper train that goes overnight, and I believe every single day. It leaves at about 6 p.m. and arrives sometime in the morning the next day. With delays, I think it's usually late morning, but we'll see how that all goes. Purchasing train tickets that are using the Indian rail system is almost impossible from a country outside of India. It seems to be really simple once you're in country, but very difficult outside of it. And there's all this information that you need, and you have to figure out how you're going to purchase the tickets, and it has to be at certain times of day. It's just really, I didn't remember how to do it even. It's one of those things that you only do every couple of years, and then you have to remind yourself all over again. Do you have those tasks? It's a task of like, I don't remember how to do it. I don't have the energy to even try to remember how to do it. Do I have all the old emails? Where did I put them? Where do I have this information? One option, of course, for purchasing train tickets is finding a broker who is in country to purchase them for you. I was nervous about doing that because I'm not going to lie, when Dave and I went on our exploratory trip, we were scammed several times. We were taken to places that people said, oh, this is a government-issued travel company here. you can purchase your train tickets here. And we went in, they were trying to sell us all kinds of crazy stuff. They didn't even want to sell us the train tickets. I didn't understand what was happening, but it was not good. Whatever was going on there, it wasn't legitimate. And so I was quite nervous about trying to find a broker. And I tried various means of doing this, and nothing ever really seemed to work out. Nothing seemed to be above board. So I was like, maybe we're not going to do the train this time. I don't know. But then we're using a different hotel this time. I'll talk about that in another video. And it turns out this hotel that has a very good reputation has a concierge desk, and they actually are able to purchase Indian train tickets. I said, oh, can you purchase sleeper train tickets? They said, sure, yeah, no problem. They were like, no big deal. I'm like, oh, no. And so I sent them literally cash in order that they would do this for me. It was it's through this website called Wise. It seems to be something like PayPal. And I sent them the cash, and then they purchased the tickets the next day. And I had the tickets in hand, and it was fantastic. I was like, this was so stinking easy. The specific tickets we wanted were 1AC, fully air-conditioned berths that are private, 1AC only. And the reason for this was because they're private. The sleeper trains that are second class tend to be more public, with sort of like a curtain. I've heard stories about things happening on those kind of berths that I thought, I want to make sure that my students are not exposed to anything other than just having a train experience. I didn't want them to have to be sleeping in quarters where they weren't sure what was, going to happen to their bags, for example, or who they might be sleeping across from or above or below. I wanted to make sure that we had privacy. So the 1AC berths, they are quite a bit more expensive, of course, but I feel like $50 for a train ticket is well worth having the privacy and the safety of being able to close and lock a door. 1AC sleeper berths, and it'll be a great experience of sleeping on a train on our way between Delhi and Varanasi. So that was my second major purchase. Then we had to think about how we are going to get from Varanasi back to Delhi, and the way that we timed this is we actually fly back the same day that very early in the morning, we are going to be flying back to Zurich and then back to the United States. So we had to take a plane from Varanasi back to Delhi that day. And because of the tight timeline, I didn't want to take a train. I didn't want any kind of issues like that. So we have taken the airlines in the past, and that's worked out just fine. There are, I think, 3 major airlines that do this daily trip from Varanasi to Delhi. The 2 that I knew of for sure were SpiceJet, which we've used in the past a couple times, and Indigo, which we haven't used in the past. So I looked at SpiceJet. It's a little bit less expensive. They do use propeller planes. It's a little bit sketchy, but they get you where you need to go. So I tried using SpiceJet. This time there was some kind of weirdness about my credit card wasn't going through, so I used a different credit card. That wasn't going through. It looked like I had purchased tickets. I seemed to have the printout of the tickets, but the money never came out of my account, so I don't think I ever purchased tickets. It was a little hard to say. So I ended up going with Indigo instead this time, and I purchased the tickets and everything went through and everything is fine. There was also a little bit of weirdness there where they said, well, if you are fully vaccinated, then you're going to get a discount on these tickets. And everybody in our group is fully vaccinated. That's one of the guidelines of the trip. Full boosted vaccination, the utmost up-to-date shots, please. So I said, oh, awesome, we'll get this discount. But it turns out you have to go through this specific government website to get this certification that you're fully vaccinated. And I didn't think that was worth the, $10 per ticket or whatever we were going to save. So we ended up just paying the full price tickets cost for that. And I believe those ticket prices were between $80 and $90 for this one single flight. The next major aspect of getting around is the day trip that we take from Delhi to Agra and back again. That is the day that we see the Taj Mahal, and we do a couple of other adventures in Agra itself. In order to do that, it's actually much cheaper just to go ahead and take a train. I think it costs like $4 or $5. We actually end up spending several $100s to rent a bus. and a driver. It seats 12. The bus that we've taken in the past seats exactly 12. So we have 10 students and the two of us, it's the perfect number. And we'll have fun on this trip out there. We leave early in the morning and we come back in the evening. It's one of the only opportunities that we actually have to stop off in the countryside. There's a little wayside where you can get there's a Starbucks there, and there's a number of different traditional kind of fast food restaurants, and you can kind of walk around and take your time and look at the countryside and look at the fields and so on. And I thought that was a good experience to have as well. So even though it does cost more money, I feel it's worth it for this one time to kind of keep everybody together in this one vehicle so that we can all talk to each other easily and so on. It is considerably more expensive to take this bus. However, I feel it's worth it for the efficiency and for the fun adventure of something a little bit different. So those are the major ways that we kind of shuttle people around, the airlines, the trains, and the bus, and so on. But additionally to that, of course, we have to be able to get around inside of cities. We do spend several days in Delhi and several days in Varanasi. We'll be doing a lot of walking, but there are times that we want to go places that are a little bit longer away. We take a taxi, for example, from the airport to the hotel in the first place. And that taxi, we just use the government booth outside of the main entrance at the Delhi airport in order to rent, in this case, it'll be either 3 or 4 taxis. They're I think it's about a $5 taxi ride. So that's easy enough. When we want to go someplace, in Delhi, we can use the metro. We'll probably just purchase metro cards, which are about $7 each, and they last for 3 days. Even though, again, we could save money by buying the tokens each time. It's something like 40 or 50 cents for a single train ride. So we would be saving money by not having those cards, but I feel like the convenience of the card is probably worth the extra few dollars that it's going to cost us. So that'll be a major way that we're going to get around. Another way that my students in the past have loved is using the auto rickshaws. You can only fit 2 or 3 students into one of those, but we find that it's pretty easy, at least on the front end, to flag them down and just insist, we know how much this rickshaw ride is supposed to cost. The haggling is mostly kept to a minimum because we do have multiples and we have to come to an agreement with 3 or 4 or 5 rickshaw drivers at a time. And so we'll say we'll pay you 200 rupees to get us to the Red Fort. That's about $3, $2.50, something like that, to get us to the Red Fort, for example, from our hotel. And that's, what could happen, however, because we're sort of split up like this, the students have to pull those rupees out of their own pocket and pay the rickshaw driver at the other end. And sometimes you have to argue a little bit. Not everybody's comfortable with that. So this will be one of those aspects of haggling that they're just going to have to get used to. The rickshaw driver, for example, might try to guilt them into giving them a tip or more of a tip than they were going to give. Or they might say, no, this is what we agreed upon, and they might just outright say a different price than what was originally agreed upon. So that's going to have to be up to the students. They have a certain amount of spending money, and if they have to sometimes stand their ground and say, hey, this is what we agreed upon, that's it. Or if a rickshaw breaks down in the middle of the trip and they have to take another one, they have to figure out how that transaction is going to happen. And I don't know. I wish that I could be there for every single one of these transactions, but realistically, I cannot be. I cannot take care of students at every step of the way. And maybe that's good. Maybe it's good that they learn some of those kind of difficult lessons as they go. It's pretty uncomfortable to have somebody telling you one thing and you having to be arguing back, especially about money, which many people are uncomfortable with. But anyway, so that's another major way that we'll get around when we're inside of a city and trying to get from one place to another inside of a city. This has been my video on how I take 12 travelers, most of whom are about 20 years old, and try to take them around India and get them where they need to go. It's a great adventure. It's very rewarding. Students learn a lot in this process. They learn a lot about how, the trains work, planes work. They walk their way through many different airports. They learn to talk to rickshaw drivers, and they learn to haggle a little bit. They learn how, the very impressive metro system in Delhi, and it's a good time overall. It's not as stressful as you'd think, but I will say that I do put quite a lot of planning and detail work into it ahead of time. In my next video, I will be talking about the different places that we're going to be staying in Delhi and Varanasi, and I'll be talking about how I decided on those particular hotels.